On today's show, the Cleveland Cavaliers have made a deal with the Atlanta Hawks, and DeAndre Hunter is a member of the Cavs. We'll talk all about it on this emergency edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name's Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like my Substack, The Inside Shot, 92.3 The Fan, Cleveland Magazine, and a number of other stops along the way. I want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching the show on YouTube right now, do me a favor as we get started here. Hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. A proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode, of course, sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Cleveland Cavaliers did not stand pat at the 2025 NBA trade deadline, as they have sent Caris, LeVert, and Niang to the Atlanta Hawks in exchange for DeAndre Hunter. There was some draft compensation, mainly second-round picks, and a few pick swaps, like swaps of swaps, that were sent to Atlanta to complete this deal. But the Cavs made an upgrade at the small forward position, and this is a big deal, I think, in terms of the Cavs' title hopes. I think this is a big deal in terms of how they view this team moving forward and what they're capable of. I don't think that the Cavs make this deal unless they believe that they're capable of winning the NBA Finals in June. So I do want to talk about the ramifications of this deal, trading away Caris, LeVert, trading away Niang, what this looks like financially. I will do that in segments 2 and 3 of this emergency edition. But I want to start with just who DeAndre Hunter is as a basketball player. Like, what are the Cavs getting? And I will have on for tomorrow's podcast, going to sit with Brad Rowland of Locked On Hawks. We're going to talk about Hunter and what he means for the Cavs and do all of that. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that too. But DeAndre Hunter is somebody that the Cavs have not had. Like, he is a true small forward. He is somebody that they have been searching for a really long time. The knock on this roster construction is the Cavs don't necessarily have, a plethora of true wings. They've had Caris, LeVert, who is an undersized 3, really more of a 2. Max Strus, more of a 2. Isaac Okoro, more of a 2. Dean Wade, really good, but more of a 4. Like, that is what this Cavs roster has been. And DeAndre Hunter is somebody who comes in, and he is the prototypical small forward that the Cavs have been searching for. He's a solid defender. I don't think he's a great defender, but he is absolutely somebody that if and when the Cavs see the Boston Celtics in the postseason, he's going to be matched up on Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown. That is what that is going to be his job on that end of the floor. Is he going to be a defensive player of the year finalist? No, but I think he does make the Cavs better on that end of the floor. If nothing else, he gives them more optionality on that end of the floor, because Dean Wade is still a really good defender when he's healthy. Isaac Okoro is still a really good defender when he's healthy, but now the Cavs have a better option, or another option, I guess, as we can look at it, on that end of the floor that they haven't really had. And then the other thing is the offensive end of the floor, right? DeAndre Hunter does not have the same level of creation that Caris, LeVert has. I don't expect to see DeAndre Hunter creating for himself, creating for others. He's mainly a guy that's going to be attempting catch and shoot 3-pointers. But the good news for the Cavs is that he's really good at that. So on catch and shoot attempts so far this year with Atlanta, he's shooting right around 40% on over 5 catch and shoot threes per game, which is a really good number. And on wide open threes, he's shooting around 50%. With the guys that he's going to be playing with, and we will talk in a second about whether or not he should be in the starting lineup, all of that, because there's a lot to dive into from this. But when he's on the floor with Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, he's going to be getting some really good looks. I know Trae Young in Atlanta is obviously one of the best creators in the NBA. He's the leader in assists this season. And obviously DeAndre Hunter is going from playing with him to playing with two guys that can create at maybe not quite that level, but a level really, really near to it. So I do think that he's going to fit in really well. And I think this is a really good move for the Cavs. I think that the Cavs got better by making this trade. I think that this is one that, I first talked about this the other day, and I heard at this point, it's probably a month ago, I heard about the Cavs having interest in DeAndre Hunter, but it's just so far away from the trade deadline that you hear things and it's nothing that is concrete enough to report. But, you hear the whispers out there that he's somebody that they're interested in, that could make sense there. And to see it come to fruition, I think that this is a really strong vote of confidence from Kobe Altman and the rest of the front office, Mike Gansey, Brandon Williams, everybody else. I think this is a really strong vote of confidence in what they think this roster is capable of. This is an upgrade. It is. That's not to say that Caris, LeVert, and George Niang aren't good basketball players, because they absolutely are. But this is an upgrade. Now, is DeAndre Hunter going to be in the starting lineup? I don't know. I think that'll be a very interesting thing for Kenny Atkinson to figure out. When he was in Atlanta this year, for the most part, he was coming off the bench. I believe he only started 4 games this season with the Hawks, but throughout his career, he's a guy that has started much more frequently than he's come off the bench. This is really his first year in that 6-man role. Last year, he started 37 of the 57 games he played. Before that, he started 67 games, 52 games the year before that. Now, the knock on him has at times been his availability. Last year, he only played 57 games. This year, he's played 37 games, which there was a 2 or 3 week stretch earlier in the season where he missed time with an injury for Atlanta. But going back to 22-23, played 67 games. 21-22 played 53 games, which not a great number. 20-21, which of course was a shortened season, his second year in the league, only played in 23 games. Like, that is a knock on him, the availability thing. But when you combine that with the rest of the options, this is not necessarily only Dean Wade insurance, but it does give the Cavs more optionality. And there are some lineups that I think should be really exciting to look at, because the Cavs are going to be able to, at some point, be able to go Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, DeAndre Hunter at the 3, Dean Wade at the 4, and Evan Mobley at the 5. And I think that on both ends of the floor, that can be a really, really dynamic group. Having the creation of Garland, Mitchell, and Mobley being able to create as a big too, plus the switchability that they'll have between Mobley, Wade, and Hunter, I think is something that's going to make this defense better than it has been. I think that is something that Cavs fans should be really, really excited about, because this is something that I do think raises the floor of this team. I think it also raises their postseason ceiling, because we can talk about how they match up with the Boston Celtics. And I look at this move, and I was going to look at any move the Cavs did or didn't make on the trade deadline day. How does this affect how they match up with Boston? Because I think as is, they were a team that was good enough to beat New York. And I do think as is, they were a team that was good enough to beat Boston, but their margin for error was so slim. There really wasn't much, because we saw that on Tuesday night. If Evan Mobley has a bad game, despite the fact that I thought Donovan Mitchell played well in that game, Darius Garland played well in that game, Jared Allen played well in that game, but Evan Mobley played poorly. If he had a bad game, the Cavs couldn't beat the Celtics. And I still think that is true. Like, the Cavs need Evan Mobley to be much better than he was on Tuesday to beat Boston in a playoff series. But I think that this brings down maybe the level of greatness that Evan Mobley needs to achieve. He still can't be what he was on Tuesday and expect the Cavs to beat the Celtics 4 times in 7 games. But I don't think he needs to necessarily be as great as maybe he did 24 hours ago for the Cavs to accomplish that. I do think that giving the Cavs now, not only, they're not as reliant on Dean Wade. And I think that is one thing that this move accomplished, because Dean is an awesome role player. He fits in really well, but he was very indispensable. And you saw it when he's been out injured, because the Cavs don't have any other options at that spot. Now they do. And I do think that they'll be able to play both of those guys together. I think that they're going to have a lot of space shooting wise, because now there's going to be nobody on the floor that teams feel they can ignore. Like, when the postseason arrives, Isaac Okoro, if he's healthy, he's going to be out there, and teams are not going to respect him as a shooter, but they will respect DeAndre Hunter. They will respect Dean Wade. Obviously, the guys in the backcourt, I don't need to say that, and Evan Mobley is going to be an offensive force. So this is something I think that ultimately their best lineup could be playing Evan Mobley at the 5, or Jared Allen, depending on how well he's playing, Dean Wade, DeAndre Hunter, and the 2 guards. I think that is a lineup that can absolutely destroy teams. And I think most importantly, when you look at Boston's starting lineup and the way Boston is going to close games out with Kristaps Porzingis, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Derek White, Drew Holiday. That lineup that I just mentioned for the Cavs, that's their best way to match up with it. And that was not possible necessarily with Caris LeVert or George Niang in there. That is something that the Cavs did by making this move. The Cavs got better on Thursday. They did. I have no doubt about that. Kobe Altman also threaded the needle. We're going to talk about that next right here on this emergency edition of Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on retirement contributions. The privileges of the very privileged are no longer exclusive. With Robinhood Gold, your annual IRA contributions are boosted by 3%. Plus, you can get 4% APY in your cash in non-retirement accounts. That's over 8 times the national savings average. The perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive your 3% boost on annual IRA contributions, sign up at robinhood.com/gold. That is robinhood.com/gold, GOLD. Investing involves risk, rate subject to change, 3% match requires Robinhood Gold at $5 a month for 1 year from first match. Must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to robinhood.com/boost. Over 8 times the national average savings account interest rate. Claim is based on data from the FDIC as of November 18th, 2024. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. The Cavs, the trade deadline has passed as I record this. It is 3:14. The Cavs are done making deals. DeAndre Hunter is the guy. Like, that was the guy they targeted. I don't think that, and I know that there were people that wanted Cam Johnson. I don't know that the Cavs necessarily liked Cam Johnson all that. They liked him. I don't know that they loved him. Certainly not with what he was going to cost. And as you see, the Brooklyn Nets did not make a trade unless something last minute came up that I'm not seeing as I recorded this. But that is something that I don't know that the Cavs loved Cam Johnson. I think DeAndre Hunter is a really good fit. Cam Johnson might have a little bit higher upside. He might have more of an offensive, might have a heavier lift offensively, might be capable of more on that end, but I don't think defensively he necessarily fit in with what the Cavs were looking for quite as well. So to make this trade work, the Cavs traded Caris LeVert, George Niang, some second-round picks, and some pick swaps to the Atlanta Hawks. And what this trade also accomplished, the thing that makes this kind of deal difficult to pull off, and why I think Kobe Altman deserves a lot of credit for pulling this off, is it can be difficult, of course, to improve at the trade deadline, right? It's hard to send something out and get something back that makes you better, especially when the team is 41-10. It's not as if this team is a team scuffling right now. They have the best record in basketball, and they've had the best record in basketball for the vast majority of this season. But the other thing that they did, because that's a challenge in itself, not every team that goes out and makes a deal near the deadline instantly gets better. I do think that the Cavs got better on Thursday. The other thing that they did was they were able to get out of the luxury tax. And I think that anytime you are in a position where the Cavs were, where they were less than $2 million into the tax, anytime you're in that avenue, and I've talked about this on this show, if you're going to be in the luxury tax, you want to be in the luxury tax. You don't want to dip your toe in. You want to jump all the way in. And the Cavs, this move signals even more that they will be a luxury tax team next year and for several years to come after that. That's why it was important to get out of the tax this year. But as I've said right here on Locked On Cavs, and as I've written at the Inside Shot too, I also thought it was important that if the Cavs were going to duck the tax, which is good business, right? Like they now can push off the repeater tax for another year. And that is an important thing to think about as we go through this exercise. But with them being 41-10 on the day of the deadline, with them being a team that has a legitimate chance to win the finals in early February, and there's no reason to think that's going to change as long as they stay healthy. This wasn't a situation where I thought the Cavs could just say, hey, we're 1.8 or whatever it was over the luxury tax threshold. We're going to trade away Tristan Thompson and attach a second round pick. And that move is going to put us under the luxury tax. And we're not actually going to get better. It's just a cost saving move. Like, it's just a move that saves money. Could they have done that? Sure. I think that would have been a really bad look. I do think that it was important that if they were going to get under the luxury tax, they needed to find a move that made them better in doing so. And that's exactly what this front office did. And they deserve credit for that, because it could have been easy to say, you know what, we're good as is. Tristan Thompson means a lot in that locker room, but he doesn't play a ton. And you can say, or you could replace it with other players too. It doesn't have to be specifically Tristan Thompson. Attach a second round pick to him, trade him into a team that has cap space, and voila. That's, the Cavs are under the tax. Not a big deal. But I don't think that's something that should have been done. I think it's really wise that the Cavs did not do that. And I don't think that there was some mandate from ownership to get under the luxury tax either. I do not believe that Dan Gilbert was not willing to pay the tax for this team. I think he was very willing to pay the tax for this team. But I also think it needed to be probably a little bit more than what the Cavs were paying in terms of where they were at in the tax. Like I said, if you're going to be in the tax, you want to be in the tax. You don't want to have your toe dipped in. You want to jump in. And now the Cavs are going to jump into that next year. But this year, the fact that they got better and saved money is a really tough needle to thread. Kobe Altman deserves credit. Mike Gainsey deserves credit. Brandon Weems, that entire front office, they deserve credit for being able to find a way to get better and get under the tax. And the other part about this is, yes, Caris LeVert's a good player. And if you listen to this show, you know I'm higher on Caris LeVert as a basketball player than I think a lot of people. I really like his game. Obviously, he has struggled since returning from the wrist injury. And I do wonder how much, you know, having his name be involved in trade rumors, I wonder how much him being involved in trade rumors played into him struggling too. Because that can be a really hard thing to ignore this time of year. And I think that, you know, it's not like it's not, he wasn't a bad player. He was a good player. But this is a better roster fit. George Niang, again, friend of the pod, came on Locked On Cavs this summer. George is certainly a great piece of that locker room. He will be missed in that locker room. I thought had a pretty solid bounce back year for the Cavs this year. But to trade away those two guys, get better, and not give up, what I think is maybe the most important part about this is the Cavs got better without having to give up Jalen Tyson, their first round pick from last spring, who they remain high on, not having to give up Isaac Okoro, a young player who still is developing, had a really good season before that shoulder injury, and we'll see what he looks like when he comes back, not having to give up Dean Wade, who the Cavs view as a very, very important piece to this team, and we've seen how important he is when they're healthy, and not having to give up a 2031 first-round pick, their only tradable first-round pick right now. Not having to give any of those things up, I think, is really important in this negotiation that Kobe Altman and his team accomplished. And the other part of this, too, that I look at is Caris LeVert was going to be a free agent this summer. I don't know if the Cavs could have retained him. He, before his wrist injury, played really well, was probably going to, you know, maybe cost a little bit more than the Cavs could have paid or would have been comfortable paying Caris LeVert. After the wrist injury, I don't know. I don't know what his market's going to be. But there was cost uncertainty financially with him because he's a pending free agent. I don't know what his next contract is going to look like, and the Cavs don't know exactly what his next contract is going to look like. George Niang had one more year after this season, so the books were a little bit murky in the future. Well, DeAndre Hunter has 2 more years after this season on his current contract. He's not going to be a free agent, or not scheduled to be a free agent, until the summer of 2027. So this gives the Cavs a little bit more certainty. Maybe they don't quite have the same flexibility they did before this move to make more moves, but that's fine. And I think that this front office has deserved credit for the creativity in which they've shown in some of the moves that they have made. But now they kind of know who they are. And it's not to say that they can't make an upgrade in the future, because as I mentioned, they still have all the assets that I talked about in Jalen Tyson, Isaac Okoro, the 2031 first round pick, Dean Wade. Like if there is another move out there this summer, if things don't go as planned in the postseason, like they can find ways to pivot. But today, this is about the upgrade they made for the 2025 season, for the 2025 postseason. And if you look ahead to the future, there are some really good things that this shores up. Like, okay, you know what the wing is going to look like for the Cavs for at least the next 2 seasons after this one. And I think that's a really, really good place to be. I think that is something that should not be overlooked when talking about this trade. So they did have to give up something. I just want to say a few things about Caris LeVert, about Georges Niang, and we will get out of here on this emergency edition after the Cavs make a trade in season for the first time in a couple of years. So we'll do that next right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Are you looking for tickets to your next big event, whether it's a concert, a comedy show, sports game? Finding the right ticket at the right price can be a headache. I don't want you to have a headache. I don't like having headaches. Why would I want you to have a headache? But with Game Time Picks, it's never been easier. So let me tell you how Game Time Picks works. With Game Time Picks, the app does all the hard work for you. It curates the best deals so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings, right? You just want the good stuff. You want the fluff removed from your ticket buying experience, because who doesn't? Who would want to have to look through thousands and thousands and thousands of tickets? No, you want the best deals at the best, or you want the best tickets at the best deals. Game Time Picks does that. So the best part too with Game Time is their lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal somewhere else, Game Time will refund you 110% of the difference. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something comes up. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKDOWNNBA, that is LOCKEDONNBA, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKDOWNNBA, LOCKEDONNBA, for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. And if you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me, click that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. The Cavs will miss the guys that they sent out. And I think that is something that should be mentioned here, because anytime you better the roster, you got to give something up. And I think that Caris LeVert has been a very good member of this team since the Cavs acquired him at the trade deadline back in 2022. And he's been, I think, a really good player for the Cavs in his time in Cleveland. He shot just under 37% from three. I thought he was having a really good season. He's averaged 12 points a game in Cleveland. That might seem a little underwhelming, but his role is just, it's changed so much. And he's somebody that has seen his role change a lot. He's been a starter at times. He's come off the bench at times. It's been, I think, sometimes a tough fit, but overall, I think he added to this team. And I think if you look at what he did in the postseason last year, he was really good in that series against Boston when they didn't have Donovan Mitchell after he had a calf injury. And I think that Caris LeVert has stepped up in some pretty big moments for the Cavs. Is he a perfect player? Of course not. But I do think he's somebody that is going to make the Atlanta Hawks a little bit better in terms of creation, and they don't have a ton outside of Trae Young. Now, I don't think that Atlanta team is going anywhere. I don't think they're very good after trading away DeAndre Hunter and Jalen Johnson being injured, but I think that he was a good player, and I do think that he probably got a little bit more criticism from fans than he ultimately deserved here, because he was maybe a little bit miscast at times in Cleveland, but I thought he was a good defender. And I do think that he's the energy that he brought and the pace, the speed in which he was able to play with. I think those are the things that the Cavs will ultimately miss about him on the floor. And then Georges Niang, obviously he was signed last summer. Last year, I don't think he had the best year. I don't think that anyone was thrilled with how he played last year, but I do think that this year he's had a really nice bounce back season. And he's somebody that I do know mattered in that locker room. He was somebody that everyone in that locker room seemed to like. Everyone seemed to get around with. He was a veteran in that locker room that knew how to keep the temperature in the locker room where it needed to be. And not every loss shows up a ton on the floor in terms of personnel. Not every loss shows up a ton in the locker room, But as guys talked about maybe not needing to go make an upgrade and the camaraderie that that group has, I think George was a big part of that. So that is going to be the thing that George's production can be replaced. That is not something that I think Cavs fans should be worried about. But the off the floor stuff that George brought to the table, I do think that that is the thing that you look at and say, okay, well, this has been a locker room that throughout the entire season has been a very tight-knit group. How do they react now to some changes being made? Changes that I think make the team better. And I think it's a trade that Kobe Altman should have made 10 out of 10 times. But how does this locker room react? That'll be the next thing to watch for. But the Cavs got better on Thursday by trading for DeAndre Hunter. I think he will help. I think that this team is better. I think that they are better suited to go out and win the NBA Finals in June. I am going to have an episode tomorrow talking a little bit more in depth. I believe Kobe Altman is going to speak Thursday afternoon, late afternoon, early evening. I'm not sure what time that's going to happen, if it is going to happen, but I want to, listen to that, ask him questions. Also planning on having Brad Rowland of Locked On Hawks on tomorrow's episode for at least a segment to talk about DeAndre Hunter's season, what he's done for Atlanta, what he thinks he can bring to Cleveland, and just how this kind of changes the equation for the Cavs. So you don't want to miss any of that. Keep it locked right here to Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review. Be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching on YouTube, do me a favor before we get out of here. Hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. I'll be back tomorrow with more.